Can you please tell us what safer gambling means for Kindred?
At Kindred, we have a vision that gambling should be 100% enjoyable, right? Meaning that all our customers, they gamble in a way that adds value and joy in their everyday life. So I think for us at Kindred, we'll actually look gambling as entertainment, right? It's an entertainment and thrill in our customers' everyday life. So I think that for us is sort of the core of how we see gambling. So putting that into context in terms of safer gambling, I think for us, we want to ensure that there's a long relationship with our customers. We want them to make sure that they are in a secure and safe environment, because that improves the chances that they will stay with us for a long time. After all, a customer that self-excludes is a lost customer, and we have no interest in that in the long term. So another point for us is that we want to educate the customers so they can make informed choices, so they can help them establish some safe gambling experience. So we do that by providing information, and we provide tools, and we monitor any change that there is in the betting behavior, right? So if we see the changes, we make contact to the customer. And the last point in terms of how we see safer gambling is that we talk a lot internally about the term to be in control. So that's a whole key for us in the approach. And that basically means that we want to make all the possible efforts we can to make sure that the customer always is in full control. And that is in terms of the gameplay, that's in terms of the data, and the spend that, of course, that they have. So by that, we want to secure that there's a healthy customer behavior, and that is really the foundation of a sustainable business model in the view of Kindred.
And how do you see safer gambling technology evolving over the next 5 years?
I think that a lot of things are going to happen. I think we see great opportunities in using technology to improve safe gambling in the coming years. We are a data-driven company. We are a tech entertainment company. So we really think that driving the technology is really the key to create also a safer environment. And I think the ability to process and interpret data through machine learning and AI, that will really significantly improve the ability for us to detect, but also intervene when we see that the patterns, they change in terms of risk of the customers. Then we've been working for many years on a player safety early detection system that we now have done a significant update to. So that is being rolled out. And basically, we believe that what we did around 10 years ago really set the standard for the industry. And now when we have updated it significantly, we really believe that it's a quantum leap in terms of where we're going to be going now. We actually take technology in this sense, and we look in a much more gradual way in how the behavior is with the customer, so we in an even earlier time can actually detect if there is a possibility or a risk that we need to be aware of. So I think with the speed that the technology evolves, I think it's a lot faster than we all predicted. So I wouldn't be surprised within the next 5 years if we see substantial improvements in the online operators' abilities in preventing problem gambling, actually.
Thank you. And how do you think that the legislation around the safer gambling measures will change or might change in the future?
I think it's a difficult question, and we definitely don't want to speculate, but I think hopefully legislation will focus more on securing a stable, regulated market with high channelization. Basically, we are really focused on securing that the customers don't go out to illegal operators where they're not potentially in a safe environment. I also hope that legislators and the political stakeholders will listen to all us operators that have licenses in any given market, like Kindred, to get a better understanding of what the industry leaders are doing, like what we're doing with the early detection system that we have, and all the specialists that we have in responsible gambling, which really is significant experts that should be listened to. It's us that have the tools. We have no interest in promoting on here among any of our customers. So in order to protect our customers, I think we have to have the channelization kept at a low level, and legislation needs to take this into account. So if customers leave the licensed operators, the problem will still be there, and it won't improve because the vulnerable customers will go to the gray market where there's no consumer protection, and that is not an ideal scenario for us. And And then I think when it comes to safety and player security in general, I think legislators should take a potentially more holistic approach involving other industries. So look towards other industries who are part of the supply chain or the food chain, so to speak. And one of them, I think, is the financial institutions. I mean, when we're talking about affordability, I think banks have an important part to play when it comes to due diligence with the customers that often we share with the financial institutions. So it's important to regulate the gambling industry. Legislation, I think, is per default good, but it must be based on facts and not a political ideology or short-term policies. And that is really what we're also talking to all the political stakeholders about, and really trying to inform them and give them our perspective. So that's super important.
Exactly. And how do you think that the industry can tackle responsible gaming issues as a united front?
I think it really demands more collaboration, and I think it requires a dialogue across operators and markets. I think that we have come quite far in the European corporations that we have. I would like to see us become even more proactive through our trade associations, both locally but also throughout Europe. So yes, we are seeing some positive signs, and we're trying to take the lead in Kindred. One example is the Sustainable Gambling Conference that we host every year, which this year will be very soon, on October 21st, where the focus is exactly on technology, which we think is really at the center of responsible gambling. So we are really trying to take a stand, and we really feel like we have a lot to bring to the table in this area. And then another example could be Scandinavia, where we see operators really trying to unite locally through their trade unions. So we have Doga in Denmark, we have BOSS in Sweden, and through these trade organizations, we have sort of come up with industry guidelines. So we're trying to take the lead, not wait for the legislators to decide what should happen, and really creating code of conduct, for example, advertising complaints boards and other initiatives that really helps drive the business in the most responsible and safe way for the customers possible.
So what kind of innovation or advancements in safer gambling do you think that there is a need for at the moment?
I think that there's a couple of areas that's going to be important moving forward, but I think one subject that covers all of them is technology, right? So I think it really is required that we, as an industry, invest even more in AI, in machine learning, and basically the process or the ability to process data. I think that's going to be very key. And through that, I think we also need to consider doing more research into understanding the gambling behavior and really what triggers harmful gambling. And I think that's something we're taking a very significant stand on, but it's also something we increasingly work with university on getting a better understanding on and getting more insights into that. And then I think ultimately also it's about developing even more proactive tools for the customers to sort of completely control their own gambling. And that is, of course, partly doing the early detection systems that I mentioned before, but it's also looking into even more tools that the customers can apply themselves proactively. So ultimately, the customer needs to be informed, so he or she can make the best possible decisions. And our goals is really to secure that there's complete transparency, so the customers are presented with an overview, if they want, of all their behavior, because that will, we believe, will give them the best foundation to take the right decision for them. So ultimately, the ambition is to put the data back into the customer's hands in a very easy, accessible way, because then they will be in complete control themselves.
Thank you. And in terms of affordability, where does the balance of the responsibility lie between the operators, the financial sector, and the customer?
Yeah, Dari, I think that's a really, really good question, and I think that's also a key issue and something we're going to be talking even more about in the coming years. I think up until now, there's been too much focus on the gambling operators alone. We can ask the customers for information, but we cannot currently access a full picture of affordability. So we need more collaboration, we need more data sharing, but there are certain limitations right now, one of them being GDPR, that really makes it a challenge for us to get that full picture, even though we have the best of interests. One example could be in Denmark, where we have what we call the NEM ID, or what's equivalent to the bank ID in Sweden, and we really use that, and the customers use that to get in and log in to their accounts, but we cannot actually access, because of the GDPR, the full picture in terms of affordability, and that is GDPR alone that prevents us from doing that. So that makes it sometimes difficult for us to combat anything from fraudulent behavior, laundering risks, etc. So that's not ideal. So we really need to have a closer dialogue with the banks, the financial institutions, to have think about how we can protect the customers even better than we're doing today, because we have the best of intentions. And then I think that there are some concerning developments in certain markets. We see steep fines in some markets because operators have not been able to sufficiently identify where the money has come from. And we take that responsibility hugely serious, because that's very damaging for us as operators, but also as an industry as a whole. So I really think it is something we need to pull together on as an industry, but also talk more increasingly to the other stakeholders, such as the financial institutions, to solve that moving forward.
Exactly, thank you. And when it comes to advertising, what proportion of the gambling industry advertising do you think it should be allocated to safer gambling, and why is that?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of talk about this in the industry right now. I know that BDC in the UK, for example, have made a rule that it says 20% of advertising should be going to safer gambling messages. I think that that's a good start, but ultimately I think that we need to move past talking about how big a percentage is going to be used, and talk more about how it becomes an integrated part of all our communication, including our marketing and advertisement. So for me, it doesn't make so much sense to talk about a percentage. I more want to talk about how does it need to be an integrated part of all our communication, whether it's the newsletter we send out to the customer, or it's the on-site campaign message, or it's the 30-second TV ad that they see during a football match. I think that is where the key is. It's not about being an excuse for ourselves. We're in the entertainment business, but we take our responsibility very serious. So I'm more towards making the responsible gambling part of all of our communication, no matter what channel it goes through. And that is one thing we've been working on in Denmark, where we've done a code of conduct, where we specifically talk about how it needs to be part of all our communication channels. And one example could be that we cannot highlight a certain urgency in a promotion, for example. So that's also a way of taking an RT messaging into context by stopping doing certain things in terms of urgency and go and play now, etc. So I think we need to look at it much more holistically and not talk about just a percentage of your advertising budget.